What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Fast. Today, let's get started with Kamaru Usman sees holes in Shavkat Rakhmonov and Ian Garry's games after UFC 310. Kamaru Usman believes UFC 310 exposed both Shavkat Rakhmonov and Ian Machado Garry's games. Prior to UFC 310, Kamaru said that the fight is only exciting on paper. He was right to a degree as Rakhmonov and Machado Garry spent plenty of time fighting in the clinch. The former UFC welterweight champion thinks Rakhmonov's competitive win over Machado Garry came down to heart. That's what I expected. Ian needs to create space. Ian's a very good and dynamic striker. You could tell. You saw that in the fight. If he's able to create space, then he's able to kind of get his flow going. And Shavkat wants to get to the action. I've got to get my hands on you. This is some of the things that I was seeing, but obviously with the potential of me potentially fighting him, I didn't want to give too much away, but these are some of the things that I'm seeing. There are holes in both of their games. Once Ian got taken down a few times, then the fight kind of got away from him. Shavkat, as far as standing and putting the combinations together, he couldn't really do that well with Ian Garry. There are holes in both of their games, but I expected a fight like this. Aljamain Sterling ponders future after UFC 310 loss. Aljamain Sterling's loss to Movsar Evloev at UFC 310 has him pondering what's next. It was a close, back-and-forth affair on the ground where Sterling showed he could hang, with the elite at 145 pounds. However, the disappointing outcome left Sterling in a quandary when it comes to his title hopes. When we were in the back room, Ray Longo had just stepped out, and I told the guys, I was like, I'm gonna let you guys know, I don't really know what I'm gonna do from here. I need to let it settle a little bit, but at 35, I don't know if I really want to climb the ladder all over again. I don't want to say from scratch, but the end goal is so much further. I'm at a point where it's like, is that worth the time invested for the surgeries, the pain, the training? Do I continue, or do I just help out the guys and help them get ready for their fights and whatnot, and maybe just take fun fights? I don't know. I don't want to retire, but I've got to see what the UFC offers, and then kind of make a decision to go from there to see where my positioning is. I can't train the way I used to. I used to do 2-3 training sessions a day. I can't do that anymore. Arman Tsarukyan explains why he was surprised by Islam Makhachev accepting UFC 311 fight date. Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan will go to war in the main event of UFC 311 in Los Angeles on January 18th in a highly anticipated rematch. During a recent interview, the lightweight title challenger admitted that he was surprised by the champion's decision to accept a fight for January. 90% is going to be my fans at UFC 311. I'm surprised that he agreed to the fight because it's not his territory. I thought he wanted to maybe fight in Saudi Arabia or Dubai or somewhere else, but not in California. California is an Armenian town, you know? Colby Covington reveals he sank to lowest of lows after UFC 296 title loss. Colby Covington hit a low point after falling short in his third attempt at undisputed UFC gold. Covington hasn't competed since a lackluster unanimous decision loss to Leon Edwards in their UFC 296 title fight last December. His first 2 attempts to become UFC champion ended in competitive losses to Kamaru Usman. Covington's third crack at the title, which came after a win over Jorge Masvidal, was perhaps his most disappointing one. It's been a year since my last fight, and I've used that time to really grow myself as a martial artist and as a person. Mentally speaking, I'm in a better place than I've ever been. After I lost 3 shots at the undisputed title, it felt like the lowest of lows. I lost and forgot who I was, and that was a good reminder that woke me up again. I just had to cancel out the bad energy, and I knew that I couldn't let that hype and ego get to my head. I had to train harder to be the #1 contender again, because all I ever wanted was to be the undisputed champion. That's all I cared about. Now it's about coming back and giving the fans a real treat of who Colby Covington is. People have tried to write me off, so now it's about rewriting all those wrongs. Daniel Cormier explains how mental fatigue is reason for Ilia Topuria's odd callout of Charles Oliveira. Daniel Cormier theorizes that UFC featherweight champion Ilia Topuria is no longer motivated to defend his title. Topuria recently said he's interested in moving up to lightweight for his next fight, to take on top contender Charles Oliveira. Topuria also hinted that we've likely seen his final fight at 145 pounds. Topuria knocked out featherweight greats Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway back-to-back, becoming the first to finish Holloway by strikes at UFC 308. When you beat the best guys, especially the 2 guys that ruled the division for so long, there can be a little bit of fatigue in there. It's not like muscle fatigue, it's mental fatigue. You have to be so up to do what he did to Max Holloway and to do what he did to Volkanovski. I don't care what people tell you. The only ones that believed that he would do what he did was Ilia Topuria and his team. You can't think that was going to happen just being on the outside. He went out and he knocked out Max Holloway. That doesn't happen. You don't knock out Max Holloway. He knocked out Volkanovski. You don't do those things back to back. There are fresh matchups such as Evloev and Lopez awaiting Topuria at featherweight, but Daniel explains that after El Matador took out the biggest names, he'll have a hard time getting up for the rising contenders. Now he went from fighting two established veteran stars, people that sell pay-per-view, the BMF champion, to now he's got to fight a guy that's on the upswing, a guy that's on the rise, a guy that truly is who I was only a couple fights ago. Dricus du Plessis claims Khamzat Chimaev fight was discussed before UFC 312 booking against Sean Strickland. When du Plessis steps back inside Octagon, he'll be facing a familiar foe. The reigning middleweight champion will go one-on-one with the man he narrowly defeated for the gold, Sean Strickland. The two will meet again at UFC 312 on February 8th, but it was Chimaev's name that was originally on the table. During an interview, Dricus du Plessis was asked if Khamzat Chimaev was ever in play for his next UFC middleweight championship defense. The 185-pound ruler revealed that Boers actually was in consideration. It was on the table for sure. We talked about it, but it wasn't from our side or from his side where the fight didn't happen. I think it was some issues with the UFC and Khamzat, I'm not sure. And timing, I think timing played a big role, but there were conversations and I said that's the fight I want, so let's do it. They couldn't make it happen, so Strickland is the fight they did. Gilbert Burns can see Colby Covington, exposing Joaquin Buckley at UFC on ESPN 63. Gilbert Burns thinks Colby Covington has the style to pose problems for Joaquin Buckley. Since moving back down to welterweight, Buckley is 5-0, most recently knocking out Stephen Thompson at UFC 307 in October. However, former title challenger Burns thinks if Covington can weather an early storm, he'll swarm Buckley. I think Buckley's in the best momentum right now, but wrestling is Buckley's kryptonite. One of my favorite teammates is Logan Storley. He was the interim Bellator champ. He fought Buckley, and Logan just out-wrestled him. Colby's always training. The guy is always training. He's always in shape. I think Colby might give a lot of problems to Buckley. Keep taking him down with that crazy pace. Buckley's a big guy with a lot of muscle. Colby can get maybe a dominant decision win, or Buckley can get a quick knockout in the first or in the second round. Dustin Poirier reveals secret wish to fight Ilia Topuria as El Matador eyes lightweight jump. Dustin Poirier hasn't been one to pick fights, but his repost of Ilia Topuria's plans to move up to lightweight could mean he's eyeing a showdown with the undefeated El Matador. Dustin, with maybe a couple of fights remaining in his career, wants to go out being carried by fans in the arena like a rock star, and the Topuria fight might just provide him with that. As far as Topuria is concerned, moving up is a big step, and starting his lightweight journey against someone of Poirier's caliber would be a statement and a risk. For Dustin, the idea of welcoming Topuria to the division has its own appeal. Known for his grit, power, and world-class striking, Poirier is a formidable gatekeeper to the top of the lightweight rankings. From a fan's perspective, this potential matchup checks all the boxes as well. Topuria has long claimed to have been the best boxer in the UFC. That theory will be thoroughly put to test if he takes on a southpaw of Poirier's power and skills.